Yeah. Breaking news in the Morning Combat newsroom. Boxing bonanza scheduled for July 20th. Cowboys Stadium at Jerry World in Arlington. Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson streaming live on Netflix. How the heck did we get here? Hey, welcome on in, Brian Campbell, one half of the most explosive duo since diarrhea, right? It's called Morning Combat. It's in your face hole a few times a week when we used to do it. And oh, by the way, spoiler alert, we're about to do it again in a big way. So get fired up. One half of your duo here, your boy BC, that guy, yeah, the American Alpha. I don't know what to make of this. Thursday, March 7th, 2024. It was breaking news this late morning that was that rare kind in combat sports, the kind that wasn't broken through rumors or reporting or teases or anything like that. The one that literally just fell out of the sky. And the immediate reactions from everyone has been all over the place, which lets you know a couple things. First of all, this is going to be big. This is going to be really, 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 really big. Like, really big. Netflix is now into combat sports and live sports in general. In fact, this fight will represent the third live sporting event for Netflix, which just signed WWE Raw to, a multi-billion-dollar deal, and the first combat sports event. And I believe it's going to stream live and air live to subscribers here in a massive, massive move, because we are talking about love it or hate it, and a lot of reasons for both, for sure. We're talking about the simple math of pairing together two of the most popular people on the planet right now. It's sort of that thing that happens every once in a while when you debate the Max and the Max and the biggest combat sports fights ever from the standpoint of live gate and pay-per-view sales, and you basically ask yourself, like, what actually could top that? Inevitably, you're going to end up with LeBron James versus Vladimir Putin in a boxing match, something absolutely absurd and ridiculous that just wakes up generations of people across sporting, boxing, social media, pop culture landscapes. This is one of those fights that I've already received texts from my mom about, that I've already received texts from my high school friends who don't watch combat sports and all, and go, hey, is it shameless that I'm really, really excited about this fight? The answer to that is yes and no. I don't know how we're supposed to receive this fight. I do know we're all going to circle our calendars. I do know we're all going to be watching. I hope to be there covering it, because it does have one of those bells and whistles, suppress your true feelings on it. It's going to be so big you just can't miss it. For as big as we thought Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul was or could be, this is next level. And even though we're getting a lot of takes from the old boxing fans saying this is criminal, this is ridiculous, Mike's going to go in there and kill Jake Paul, and then we get the exact opposite from current boxing fans who say, you know what, this is ridiculous. Jake Paul's going to kill Mike Tyson. And you get what the fight is intended to pull in. All of those casual outsiders who were either former boxing fans or just Mike Tyson celebrity fans, Jake Paul celebrity fans, that are like, holy crap, these two are not only going to face off against one another, they're basically 30 years apart in age, and they're basically, experience wise, obviously a massive gap there. But the biggest hurdle that's going to have to be cleared for this fight to go off, for it to be a success, for us not to look back at this in the same way we look back at failed disasters like the 1984 Dune movie, or Geraldo opening up Al Capone's vault. Wow, I'm referencing only things from the early 80s here. Ishtar, another 80s flop, surrounds the biggest sort of sore thumb from this announcement. It's Mike Tyson's age. So yeah, 4 years ago, right? 2020, prime pandemic on Triller, or I guess technically pre-Triller, or was it considered Triller at the time? Not even, who knows at this point, right? Mike Tyson comes back at age 54 against Roy Jones Jr. and kind of a fun exhibition, which helped kick off this current era of crossover carnival circus fights that are technically boxing, technically within the realm of it, but are certainly over here. We're pulling in ex-famous combat athletes. We're bringing over crossover entertainers and YouTube personalities were just doing ridiculous things that we all said, okay, this is fun while it's lasting. It's happened before. You can make money here, but the balloon's going to pop. And to the Paul brothers' credit, and specifically Jake Paul, the balloon hasn't popped. But it's one thing to say, hey, man, Mike Tyson looked great 4 years ago when he came back and, hooked up with top class trainers and just got into the best shape of his life and did something, got back into a fight that we never thought he would, even with his notorious reputation. You look at the Mike Tyson before that Roy Jones comeback, and you see a guy who's, I mean, it's wild that he's alive. He's lived 10 different lives up to this point. He's reinvented himself so many times. He's been a pariah. He's been a hero. He's been everything and in between. But he came back and put on a great showing for himself against, matched well against a similarly aged and faded fighter in Roy Jones. And he looked very good in that exhibition fight in doing so. We never thought he'd come back because of how he used to talk about the role that fighting that played in his life. Mike, once he got through a lot of healing and a lot of pain that he went through, would openly speak and say, that monster I used to be, that I used to turn myself into, he would speak down to it. So I thought him coming back, surviving that test against Roy Jones, not from a win-loss standpoint, just from a health standpoint, looked good in doing so. It not only was hopefully a boost to his bank account, reviving his brand, not that it needs it, but was sort of his way of closure, of going out of boxing on his own terms rather than the way he did go out in boxing, which is 2005, his last fight, Showtime pay-per-view, Kevin McBride, where he essentially just sat down after being knocked down against the ropes and just said, yeah, I think I'm done. This is it. And it was the tail end of a nosedive for Tyson, an ending of his prime pro career that was more about meltdowns, than knockdowns. He got to come back on his own terms, sort of fix the glitch, walk out one more time, great shape, everything was perfect. I know there was immediate rumors afterwards that he would continue fighting or that this would launch some Legends League that never happened, but I didn't think it would happen. But if it has to happen, this actually is the perfect matchup for it to happen to. Get into that in a second. But it's 4 years later. How the heck are we going to get past the fact this will be a 58-year-old man going in there against a 27-year-old man who is going to be faster, quicker, not stronger in one-punch power by any means, but is going to be facing a different kind of beast, not a washed-up Roy Jones, a prime entertainer turned fighter who, say what you will about him, he's the best in that grouping. He's the best in that silo of people who are trying to do the same thing he is, cut the line, use their star power, but still dare, right, to do something that is insanely dangerous and incredible, which is be a professional boxer. How are we going to clear this for the Texas State Commission come July 20th? Now, Texas has long been in, especially in boxing, an infamous commission known for liberalness. Sure, right? Florida and Texas in this modern day, think COVID time and UFC, or, they're known for being liberal. They're also known for making a lot of mistakes at the highest level, whether we're talking about referee Lawrence Cole, the late Judge Gail Van Hoy. Texas has a reputation. Yet Texas is the same state that just suspended rising prospect Keyshawn Davis 9 months, fined him, and pulled him from his fight against Jose Pedraza. Why? Because he was caught with marijuana in his system in 2024. This isn't Nate Diaz in 2012 in Nevada, right? This is a long time later. How is that same commission going to justify rolling out a guy that throughout such a crazy up and down life in the public eye has entered a period of almost unanimous love as a nostalgic representation of our youth for sure, but certainly as just one of the most dynamic, absurd, incredible personalities that we've ever seen in sports. That, if you didn't live it, when Mike Tyson was on top, he wasn't just on top of the sporting world. In the late 80s, he was on top of celebrity culture. He was married to actress Robin Givens. He was having marital spats and breakdowns with Barbara Walters on 2020. I mean, it was just like, there's never been anyone like that. Bo Jackson didn't even really fully touch that. Michael Jordan at that point didn't really fully touch that. So this is a guy all these years later that we love, we want to protect. Can we beloved? Is that a word? Or that we love, maybe? Either way, we want to protect. The worst thing that can happen here, without question, is that Mike Tyson gets hurt, that he gets knocked out, that he gets, that where it's just about age in that regard. And I think that's going to be a hurdle for the commission. They're going to have to make this an exhibition. You're going to have to. That's going to make this people a little, I mean, is it going to bring in the crowds? It's going to bring in the crowds in insane numbers. Now, you're already seeing Jake Paul and some pundits say, look, this does have potential to be the biggest fight of the modern era, if not the biggest boxing event of all time. Now that's some slippery slope there because you're going to compare on a pay-per-view level to Mayweather Pacquiao in 2015, which did 4.6 million buys in the U.S. Mayweather McGregor in 2017, which did 4.4, right? Conor Habib in MMA at UFC 229 that did 2.4 million. If this isn't a pure pay-per-view and if it's a Netflix offering to essentially boost their own subscriptions in a way they've never seen before, it would be the equivalent of what we used to say was when we would get the occasional boxing match on real TV before this most recent wave when PBC relaunched nationally. It was on Fox, was on all these networks. Now we're seeing Top Rank on ESPN. It's not as abnormal. PBC on Fox. But back then, you got the rare fight that showed up on CBS. We're talking Sean Porter against Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman versus Danny Garcia. We always said, what if you could take Mayweather and put him on regular CBS? And oh, by the way, that was a topic of conversation heading into Mayweather's last regular fight in 2015 when he retired at 49-0 after beating Andre Berto on pay-per-view. We always said, what if you can put Mayweather on regular TV? What type of ad revenue can that generate to offset the lack of pay-per-view? What type of injection into boxing could that do if you were literally putting it on there almost as a Super Bowl and saying, how many people can we get to watch it? Could you get 7 million? Could you get 8 million in this modern era? We used to get, when Fedor was on CBS, it did stupid numbers. Well, now you're putting it on Netflix, which everybody has for the most part. It's not going to be a pay-per-view, I don't think, from the early break on the news. So it's not going to challenge Maypac from that way. And it's certainly not going to challenge the sort of old historical points of reference we have is in terms of like, what are the biggest fights ever? You're going to go to Ali Frazier 1971, Madison Square Garden, the fight of the century, which, during wartime in the Vietnam War, which was actually a storyline in the fight with Ali being a draft dodger, but yet coming back to fight for the title he never lost. You didn't just have a split America. You had a global audience of any age, background, or knowledge of sports that are like, I got to find out what happens to that, whether I'm listening on the radio, I'm going to the closed circuit theater. And then you go to 1938's Joe Louis Max Schmeling rematch, which, that's World War II time frame. That's a time where you're not listening to that because you're cheering for your favorite fighter. You're cheering for your country. You're cheering for freedom, right? I mean, how many people had their ears to the radio back then? I don't think we can compare fights to those because it was just different times. But yeah, this fight has the potential to produce the kind of numbers, whatever those numbers will be, whether it will be just streaming numbers or however we want to look at it. It's the kind that has no ceiling of limitations. It really doesn't. Because think of how brilliant it is. This is where, love or hate Jake Paul, you got to put the biggest Yankee Doodle feather in his cap and just say, well done, from the standpoint of creating his own promotional company with Most Valuable Promotions, right? He's got the series on DAZN. I know he's been going in weird roads lately, going away from the celebrity crossover fights, trying to go more legitimate and fighting these journeyman fighters that we've never heard of before and, spectacularly finishing them. But he was able to get this fight, not in a co-promotion, as the lead promoter, and he was able to ink a deal with Netflix just at the turning point of when they're trying to take the model that they've been successful with and say, let's mainstream it even more. Let's go live sports now. And of course, he had the behind the scenes series on Netflix, which sort of, went a good way in introducing him to any portions of the audience that aren't aware of him. But if you're young, you're coming into this because you either love Jake Paul, but you don't like sports, and you're like, he's going to fight Mike Tyson. Isn't Mike Tyson my grandfather's age? Or maybe you come in there because you know Jake Paul, but he's so polarizing that you hate him. You're like, man, if I could see him get served against anybody, Mike Tyson at 58, yeah, that's great. And then obviously on the flip side, I don't know how many old sports fans, old boxing fans, are going to be able to wake up. Probably a ridiculous amount, similar to why him fighting Roy Jones in 2020 during a point where the pay-per-view landscape in boxing was so watered down and almost killed from Maymac and Maypac. that still did reportedly over 1 million buys, which is really hard to do, which is why we celebrated that so much when Tank and Ryan Garcia did that last April. I don't know what the limitations could be for this one, the expectations, the ceiling. It's the ultimate freak fight. The ultimate. Because even if you concocted something more ridiculous, like LeBron James versus Donald Trump, or just something so stupid that it's not even a fight, right? It's just like, what is this going to look like? I know there's some elements to that, to this. Like, there's a lot of ways this could go poorly. It could be boring. It could be gross. There's a lot of ways. But it's the ultimate in the freak side of things. And it's also, and I think this is really the key element which allows this fight to be have so much potential. It's not just take two of the most famous people on the earth and put them together. It's the fact that you can completely argue either side having a huge chance of winning. It's almost similar to the fight we're preparing for this week, tomorrow, Francis Ngannou versus Anthony Joshua, where all of us in our boxing brains are going, okay, AJ should outbox him and win this. I mean, come on, right? Yeah, Tyson Fury was probably overweight and unfocused against Ngannou last year and got surprised that this guy Ngannou is a super freak and was able to adapt to the sport in certain ways so quickly. But we're still going to tune into that knowing it could either be one-sided in the favor of AJ, it could be one-sided in the favor of Ngannou with a knockout, but either way, it's like, kind of, it matters. It matters in big ways. Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul doesn't matter in some of those pure boxing ways that Ngannou is forcing his way into. Like, did I think Ngannou in Pro Fight 2 would legitimately be on the verge of, if he gets an upset against Joshua, he's pretty much the number one contender to the undisputed title. Not prepared for that. You don't have that in Tyson versus Paul, but you have that same sort of split of like, even if I know this is cringe and I almost want nothing to do with it, I still kind of have to see it. And I'm still not fully sure who's going to win it. And that's the true, utter brilliance of this promotion, of this fight pairing, of this absurdity. Because could you see young legs winning out and Jake Paul just outworking an old Mike Tyson to come away with a decision, even if it's boring? Yes. Could you also see Jake Paul's youth, motor, and aggressiveness? Let's see, he's a big kid. He's a big kid. He fights at cruiserweight. I know Mike's a small heavyweight. Jake's going to have to go up to heavyweight to meet him, but Jake's close enough, right? Could you see him hurting a past middle-aged Mike Tyson and almost, God, stopping him? I mean, it's in play. It's possible, right? Who knows how much Mike Tyson really wants to fight at this point, or is really capable of fighting. And I don't mean fighting in a, I'll box you for 8 rounds or 10 rounds. I mean, fight. Against Roy Jones, he was able, I think, to surprise Roy so early that he was sharper than most people expected, including Roy, who had been much closer to having been an active fighter at that point. But I think it was his combination of speed and power for his age, where Roy was into almost a defensive mode where it's basically like, look, I just don't want to get knocked out here. Okay, let's go the distance. We can have a good time, shake hands, we'll cash our checks, but that's it. What if this is a real fight with Jake? What if Jake is getting the upper hand? Could be bad. It could be gross. But on the flip side, there's not a single person of the millions and millions, Rock Johnson, that are going to tune into this fight that aren't in the back of their head hoping for, praying for, imagining for, or just asking themselves this question. We always say, well, what if this absurd thing happens? Will it break the internet? Will it break Twitter? Will it break X? If Mike Tyson knocks out Jake Paul, which I guess to some parts of the crowd that are, hearing the news today of this fight for the first time are like, well, that's expected. He should. He's the real boxer, right? He's got the bigger power. Power is the last thing to go in an aging fighter. All true. He's also almost 60 years old and been away from the sport now for almost 20 years outside of that one fight. So, but the fact that that is still in play, that Jake Paul could be lighting him up and Mike Tyson really needs, in a Deontay Wilder type way, really only one big counter shot to potentially win the fight. That allure of seeing what that moment would feel like. I mean, God, forget breaking the internet. There are so many people that look at Jake Paul as just a troll, as just a wannabe, as this or that. That's justification for all of those. How about all the old people? How about remember this? Remember when George Foreman did the impossible, did the ridiculous, at age 45, right? When he was losing every second against Michael Moore for the heavyweight championship. And it was starting to look like, okay, this is the end of George's lengthy 10-year comeback, right? He'd already fought for the title, fought well, but lost to Evander Holyfield. He'd already, won and lost some big fights. But no, he goes into that fight. He's losing every second until he's not in round 10, sets up Michael Moore for consecutive jab, right crosses, knocks him out. We know the story. Jim Lampley, HBO Sports, says, it happened. It happened. Just like George told him before the fight it would. I mean, that's the greatest quote ever when Lampley says, George told me when I asked him, how do you win this, that he plans on losing every second of the fight until he lands one big punch to end it. Well, that's exactly what happened. And what that moment did, outside of launching George Foreman to commercial fame, not just the George Foreman Grill, he had a sitcom. I believe it was ABC. George Foreman had a sitcom a year after that, right? It was not only like, here is America's grandfather, lovable teddy bear, right? He was purposely showing up for fights with giant trays of cheeseburgers to show people that this old fat guy can do it. If you weren't alive through that one, and as Luke Thomas often used to tell the Morning Combat cameramen who were born in the 90s, it's not your fault you were born in 1997, which was always ridiculous to me that he'd be so like Luke Thomas like and serious and telling him that. But if you didn't live it, that was like this comeback for old people. Now, what's crazy is George was only 45. I'm 45 right now. But like when George did that in 1994, it literally felt like your grandpa got off the couch and came back in there and did that. I mean, that was the 90s, right? It was killers like Tyson, Riddick Bowe, Lennox Lewis walking around, Evander Holyfield. And he did that. Could you imagine what happens if 58-year-old Mike Tyson does that? Even though this isn't for the heavyweight championship, but it's for, it would become a battle of old versus young, of generations. It would become a battle of, boxing gatekeepers saying, hey, Jake, you've disrupted, you've made some noise, but we had to call in the backups to come in there and finally put your boxing career to rest. No, that wouldn't necessarily do that. But I mean, for as many ways that this could go horribly, it also could go absolutely spectacularly. So my best friend from high school in the world, Jeff Bogus, texted me saying, man, I think I'm kind of just like into this fight. Are you okay with that? And I'm like, yeah, because it's equally absurd, sad, and ridiculous, and ingenious, exciting, perfect in a way. I mean, look, if you're a fan at all of crazy matchmaking, from Triller to the Jake Paul run to when Bellator used to put on those weird Dada 5,000 fights, to some of these spin-off promotions that are only about circus fights. It doesn't one have Fight Circus as the name? I mean, if you're into that, oh, well, we're going to see a fat guy against 3 skinny guys in MMA. Oh, great. Yeah, okay. Oh, this guy's going to fight his son. I mean, if you're into that, this is the ultimate. This really is the ultimate shit show. But it's a shit show fueled with so much fame, so much potential interest, that it's going to be hard for me to do the old guy boxing thing too hard, or the let's protect our heroes thing, which I do believe in, too hard. Because at the end of the day, I'm the same guy who, when I pull into Cumberland Farms to get gas, I have to physically stop myself from walking in and eating my next 2 meals off of those rollers, right? It's a weakness in me. I've got a weakness for crap circus fights. Does it go too far? Often. Always it does. Remember when we watched Evander Holyfield and Vitor Belfort? I was just like, yeah, no. There are many, many ways this can go really bad. Same feeling we had after Tyson Jones, when it was like Mike was going to launch this Legends League and everyone's going to be in it. Inevitably, it's going to go bad. Dada's going to have a heart attack and someone's going to die. It's going to, you know what I mean? Like, inevitably. But they're offering the Super Bowl of shit salad fights. That changes things. It changes things. And if you're going to act like it doesn't, you'd be lying to yourself. So no, I'm not going to give you, this is great for the health of the sport. Look at how many people on Netflix are going to watch this. No, that's BS. This is not great for the, anything else. It's great only because it's side of the road entertainment, but it's the ultimate side of the road entertainment. It's like when, you're in high school and someone comes around the corner and be like, dude, get over there, girl fight. And they just rip the shirt off. I mean, something absolutely ridiculous like that and unnecessary and illicit. And you're like, wait, what just happened? I got to be there. That's literally what this fight is. Only it's our hero, Mike Tyson, against the guy who you either look at as, man, that'd be pretty cool to live your life like Jake Paul does. No rules, set your own goals and limitations and boundaries. Or you can look at him as some kind of pariah or some kind of chump or whatever. Either way, you're going to be looking. And if you don't have to pay pay-per-view, if that's the way it's going to go down and it's just log on and subscribe to Netflix, we're going to get millions upon millions of people watching this. Will it be the end? Will this be the fight that burst the bubble? History will probably tell you not, no, unless something tragic happens. Even if it's gross, you're probably going to see somebody try to recreate this again. And that's crazy because we really thought this was the end. How many times has Jake Paul fought in the last year where my preview story is like, is this the fight that's going to burst the boxing bubble of crossover ridiculousness? It wasn't. It was the fight that led to this one. I always thought Jake Paul's Super Bowl in boxing was going to be Conor McGregor. But by the time that becomes, I don't want to say relevant, but by the time it becomes possible, you're probably looking at a Conor McGregor pushing 40 who's exiting the UFC with multiple losses. Although you could argue that if he loses to Michael Chandler, if they ever fight, that he could do the same thing and never fight again, right? But like I'm talking about him getting cleared of his contract and being eligible to do that. But fighting Mike Tyson is bigger than that. It's a lot bigger than that. It really is. And again, Mike Tyson could win this fight. He could. He really could. He really could. He also can get bloodied and battered by a guy that a lot of people hate. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it is what it is. I'm going to be watching. Probably be there, right? I mean, this is the reality of when we're in a business of traffic. We're in a business of clicks. What's gonna draw more clicks? UFC 300? No. Crawford versus anybody. Usyk versus Fury, right? One of the greatest fights on paper historically that we've come across in a long time. No, this one is way bigger. Embrace it. Ride it till the wheels fall off. But if you're going to avoid it out of pure grossness, and stand by that and really avoid it. Don't do the Luke Thomas thing where you say, you know what? I'm not going to watch the World Cup in Qatar because I stand against that until the World Cup gets really exciting and then I'm watching it. But I'm not watching it for Qatar. I'm watching it for the soccer. You're going to be watching this one. You heard it right here. I guaranteed it. For better or for worse. And unfortunately, in combat sports where there is often no happy endings, insert jokes, right? Yeah, there you go. Insert the jokes. There are pretty much no happy endings in combat sports, right? I mean, for the amount of times that a Floyd Mayweather can walk off on his own terms, a Khabib Nurmagomedov, a Joe Calzaghe, Amanda Nunes, Robbie Lawler, how many times is it the opposite? Yeah, more often than not. If Mike Tyson asked me for advice on this, I would say don't do it. It's not worth it. You have nothing left to prove. I don't know your finances, but I'm going to assume you're Mike Tyson. You're doing good. But I'm also not mad at him for doing it. If they're going to sanction it, if they're going to allow it, and he can make this money and probably believes he can win, I'm not mad at him because that's the way he's wired. Just like you shouldn't get mad at me for the great shape I've been in yet. One of these days, will I see a red hot rolling on the grill there? And will I grab it? I hope not. But I'm here to tell you the true answer. You're damned right. I will. All right. What are we talking about here, right? Oh, they're trying to make plant-based hot dogs. Did you see that? We don't need that. Okay. You know what I'm saying? It's sort of like don't replace Jake or Tyson with someone younger or more viable. It is what it is. It's a shit sandwich and you're going to like it because it's the biggest one they've ever put together. Wow. You never get this. You never get fights that you didn't see coming, that you didn't hear whisper. I know some people say, oh, but it was talked about a while ago. Yeah, I've talked about it before, but I talked about it in this ridiculous sense of they'll never do this. But if they did, this might be the one. This might be that one. Whatever your metric is, this might be that one. Let's just hope Mike is okay at the end of the day. But could you imagine what the world would look like if he knocked Jake Paul out? You know, I don't normally get down on that like anticipation of someone's demise where I just can't wait. Even Sean Strickland, who I don't love his shtick. No, at all. I hate it. But I'm not cheering for that guy to get knocked out. I'm not like that. I don't care. This matchup is weird enough that you're going to get the majority of this planet cheering for Mike Tyson to hurt this man and do exactly that and have the ultimate walk off. It would be a wild and weird one. It's not the same walk off as winning the championship and walking away and never fighting again, but it is in this day and age with a new currency, with new ways of doing things, it's still about the biggest thing Mike Tyson could still do in a boxing ring, as wacky as that sounds, but it is. Jake Paul built this. He's going to defend his platform, right? His stance right now as boxing's biggest disruptor. And Mike Tyson is going to try to knock him the frick out. I don't even think Jake can lose here, which is crazy, meaning he's expected to win. I saw early odds, which had Jake Paul at minus 500 in some of those offshore books. And I think that's actually about right. You can't discount young legs when you've got somebody like Jake who at least knows the core concepts of professional boxing, defense, movement, working the jab, and all that. But if he does lose, if he does get knocked out, do it again. Or just, it's bank. It's still bank to Jake Paul at the end of the day. It's still the biggest story in sports and pop culture for that day, that week, that month. Circle it on your calendars. This, Ngannou versus Joshua is big, but it's no longer our destination. 300 for UFC is big, but it's no longer the destination. There is no way, Fury Usyk in May, well, it's pretty damn big. This thing's bigger, weirder, grosser, more ridiculous. But we'll be there. We will. I mean, you want to watch this or Gladiators? Gladiators, There you go, Tommy Boy fans. All right, that's it. I'm out of here. It's BC. It was great chatting with you. I want to close with this, and I know we said it the other day. I want to say it one more time. There's been if you're a morning combat hardcore, there's been an understandable period of what are these two guys doing? Why are they doing that? Why are they're in our lives, but not really. They're like abusive dads who show up to give us a tennis racket, but I don't even play tennis. I understand that. But I want you to stop with the vibe of, man, this was a big mistake MK's doing. Guys, this is not what we're doing is not a mistake, and we're not doing anything. We're surviving. That's what it is. Showtime ending was a major blow to a lot of us in a lot of key areas, mostly financial. But we regroup. We come back fighting. We thank you for being patient. Big announcement next week. Big future ahead. I'm not going anywhere, okay? In fact, I should invest in some hair dye probably at this point. I should probably get back in that game, right? All right, that's an internal conversation for later. This has been Brian Campbell. So much great content on youtube.com/morning combat. Don't miss it. Corey Anderson to Brandon Royval to Callum Walsh talking about Dana White and Baby Shark to, man, we got the best crap going. Okay, watch it. Don't miss it. Thank you. You've been served. Papers. Be there. July 20th. It's on. Over and out.